Hi everyone, this is Chinmay here from Exploring Sports, and this live session is in collaboration with Sports Law and Policy Review Reporter. So, this page basically talks about law and sports in India, and you can find out all the upcoming latest sports law policies. And today with us, we'll be having Ahana Mehrotra. She is a very known personality in sports law in India, and she is a founder of AM Sports Law Management. She is also she is also a partner at TMT law firm, and her name, with her multiple achievements in various sports league, she has also represented our country in under 19 cricket team. I was just introducing you with our viewers, and they're really excited. Even I am excited for this session. How is lockdown going, treating you?
Lockdown hasn't been too bad, to be honest, at least not for the last couple of months, ever since we stepped into Unlock 1. Works back in full swing, so that's a good thing. There's no reason
Yeah.
to complain now.
Yeah, now this is what we have to live with. Uh,
That's true.
so let's start with your journey. Firstly, we are very delighted to have you and honored to have you on our platform, and very excited to have a conversation with you. And what gravitated you towards law, and the environment where sports law was still in a niche area and developing. So it was being evolved. So what made you choose sports law as a career?
Right. I think I get asked this question way too often, and I'm going to just try and keep this brief as, because it's getting repetitive now. But that being said, I mean, I'm sure there's some new audience. I used to play cricket back in the day, and I guess that was of course, the first inclination to, do something to do with sport. I didn't think I decided to do law when I was about 10 or 12 years old. So that was fairly early in my life. I don't think I had realized my potential as a sports person then. Excelling in cricket just happened, I mean, through my years in boarding school. And in fact, it was on the verge that I was on the verge of giving up cricket. I still remember I'd gone for my nationals, and we played against Andhra Pradesh and Haryana, and we lost both matches very badly. So I didn't even stay for the closing ceremony. Nothing. I just told my coach, I said, I have my board exam starting in 3 months, and I'm just going to fly back and figure out the closing now. I don't think I need to be here as a team or whatever. So she said, yeah, I do understand. I came back. And 2 days later, once the closing happened, is when my selection got announced to the India under 19 team. And I got a call. I just really couldn't believe it that is something that was happening. But as luck would have it, I mean, back in the day, women's cricket was not even under BCCI when I used to play. It was under a different body altogether. And I mean, forget getting paid to play. It used to be the reverse, where we used to fund ourselves, or contribute as a team to make slightly better stay arrangements, etc. When we used to go on tournaments. But so then I just left cricket altogether, because the cricket tournament that I was selected to play in which was the South Asian Federation Cup, was clashing with my class 12 board exams. So I just, decided to pursue my studies and gave up cricket in its entirety. Then when I went to law school, I think there was always that burning desire to reconnect with sport in some way. Is when I started exploring ancillary areas, like, okay, started studying in terms of what all areas of work does sport involve? Can it be married with law in any fashion whatsoever? And that's when, of course, first studied IP in depth, and that post that is when, I discovered sports law. By then, IPL had already begun in
Yeah,
India. So that sort of, opened up the prospects. We had also just hosted the Commonwealth Games in
yeah,
2010, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So,
yeah.
those things had started happening, and there seemed to be that, okay, this is going to be a developing field in India. So it's worth a pursuit. And that's essentially that. Just graduated from law school, and then decided to pursue a master's in sports law. But I mean, that being said, as I get more and more queries in terms of most people will say that oh, I'm interested in sport and I love sport. I eat, drink, breathe sport, and that's the reason I want to, and I'm a lawyer, and that's the reason I want to pursue sports law. But I guess what people do need to realize is that it's not all fun and games. You don't get to be on the exciting side of things where you're going to get to
Yeah.
watch a game too often. You're often in the back end working tirelessly behind your computer. So
Yeah.
and by the time you actually start working in sport, and there's a time that you have too much of it. So you watch lesser of it and you work more behind the scenes. So
So
that's what it
true.
is.
Yeah. If I'm not wrong, you also pursued LLM in UCLA in entertainment, IP, and sports law. So can you tell us like how was the procedure like? How did you apply, and how did you choose a right college for pursuing your degree?
So of course, I mean, I think when I graduated from law school in my 5 years, I had already figured that I wanted to then do a master's in sports law. That being said, I was still uncertain of the future, and therefore I didn't
Yeah.
want to restrict myself to only a sports law degree
Yeah.
because I was always very clear that I wanted to come back to India and work. So, given that, I knew that this is the country that I want to work in, and sports law may or may not be a worthy pursuit, I decided to do a mix of entertainment IP. So when or the research started with what was the top entertainment school in the world, it was more towards that, and not so much about what's the top sports law school in the world.
Yeah.
And that's when a bunch of law schools in the US, including, I mean, I did a research on the top IP schools, etc. And I decided to, I think the first time that I applied for my LLM was I was still in college, and it was quite a thoughtless action. And I think what people should learn from my experience, and I'm never embarrassed about talking about it, and I feel like it was a huge learning curve for me as well. That the first time that I applied for my LLM, it was I did my applications almost overnight. I think I was also overconfident about the fact that I used to write a lot in school, and so I always had the knack or flair of writing, right? So I took it for granted that I'll be able to draft an ace application without much preparation or thought. And that's why I pretty much like drafted my SOPs overnight and sent out my applications without sort of giving it too much thought. And the first time I applied to 8 law schools in America, I was rejected at all 8 law schools.
Oh, wow.
And well, it was a bit of an eye opener. Also, that I was taken aback a bit. And then I said, maybe then 6 months later, I gave it some cooling off time, so on and so forth. I said, let me work for a year. By then, I'd also sought advice from a lot of people. So they all sort of advised, and which is what I now continue to advise people when I talk about, people pursuing their masters, that one must work for a couple of years and then pursue their masters. And
Yeah.
that's essentially what I did. I worked for a year at a law firm in Delhi, and while working at the law firm is when I reapplied for, my masters. Uh, of course, the content of my SOP was pretty much the same the following year. It's just that
Yeah.
in the previous year, maybe I had a bunch of disconnected paragraphs that I sent out overnight, versus this time I spent about, a month working on my SOP. So what changed was that, okay, you pick up a draft, you look at it for the first time, and you're like, okay, this is what the basic crux or sort of highlights of what I want to send out is. And then you leave it for about 4 to 5 days and you revisit it the next weekend. Week after week, you keep improvising is when you finally arrive at a final draft. And I guess
Yeah.
that's what sort of helps you nail it down, because also that most universities stick with a word limit. I mean, something like an NYU has a word limit of only five. At least back in the day, they had a word limit of only 500 words in terms of an SOP. So to be able
Yeah.
to nail it in terms of what is the appropriate thing to write in those 500 words, and something like a Duke University where you could write up to like 5 pages, right? So again, putting that 500 words into 5 pages, or I mean, I don't think I wrote a 5 page long SOP, but I still must have written about 3 pages to be able to
Yeah.
expand and yet make it exciting and interesting enough to not have the reader be bored while assessing your application. I think that, and the following year, then I was spoiled for choice and I made it to all 8 law schools that I'd applied to. So
That's
tables
great.
turn like that. So I think that is
Yeah.
sort of the key that one must always keep at the back of their mind, that uh, you have to think things through at the time of applying for LLM. That being said, I made it to Duke. Of the 8 law schools, I think the top law school that I've made it to was Duke, which is ranked about 7 or 8 in the States for the LLM program. And then
Yeah.
came my admission to UCLA. And when I sort of got through UCLA, in fact, I'd already done my admission to Duke. I'd paid up the reservation fee of about $500 or back in the day. I had done my visa process for Duke, everything. And that's when my application to UCLA came through. And that's when I was really confused, because one was a top 10 law school in US. What they regard highly is a T14 law school is the terminology they use. So of course Duke was in the top 10 versus UCLA I think was ranked 14 back in the day. So then it was more about whether I wanted to choose the professors or I wanted to choose just the ranking. And I guess at UCLA, there's no denying the fact that because it's in the hub of Hollywood, you have professionals in the entertainment industry who come to teach you. So I think that was sort of, what finally helped me make my decision, because everybody I spoke with said the fact that, you must go with the professors and not so much with the name of the law school.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what sort of, changed everything. And then I canceled my admission at Duke and decided to pursue my master's at UCLA. Also, another edge, which I didn't know at the time of applying, but everything fell into place. Maybe if there was an iota of doubt in my head about going to Duke or whatever. I mean, even though, with all due respect, I have some great friends from Duke, because basically what Duke offered at that point of time was, prior to the LLM program starting in America, they offered a summer school in Switzerland. I think they also have one in Hong Kong, if I'm not wrong. So those are 2 summer schools they offer before the start of the LLM program. And to complete an LLM program, you need to do about 24 credits during the course of the year. What you can do by attending that summer school is that you can do up to 6 credits during that summer school. So that sort of lightens the workload that you have during that year while you're pursuing your LLM, or for that matter, gives you the opportunity to be able to study something extra, whichever way you want to go about it.
Yeah.
So I had already actually gone. I had signed up for that summer school in Switzerland, and I had despite having changed my mind to go to UCLA, and I did ask when I changed my mind about going to UCLA, I did sort of write to UCLA and saying that if they were going to recognize my credits that I was to pursue in Switzerland from Duke as a part of the UCLA course, and they said no, they weren't going to do it. I still sort of didn't bother. The degree didn't matter so much, or for that matter, the credits didn't matter. It was more from an education perspective and a learning perspective. So I still went ahead and did that summer school in Switzerland, and that's when I became friends with all the people who were going to Duke that year. And I mean, they had an equally amazing experience. I did visit some of them during my spring break. I did, go visit them and learn about the kind of experience they had during their year. That being said, that's what I said. I mean, I think if there was an iota of doubt in my mind about not having gone to Duke and picked UCLA, if I made the right decision or not, I think it all got solved when I found out upon reaching UCLA that UCLA had an option to do 4 credits worth of practical training. So what they had was basically that they had people from the industry come down to your campus, and in case you volunteered for the optional practical training of up to 4 credits, then you could sit for the interview, and if you got selected on campus for a particular assignment, then you could do an internship. So I got picked on campus by Warner Brothers, and so I got to work at Warner Brothers while I was at UCLA. So I think, and because I had an interest in IP and entertainment, they did let me work in the IP and anti-piracy department through that time that I was pursuing the internship. I think that was something that really gave me an edge, given that, I wanted to come back to India and work, but also having had the opportunity to, get that whole experience of having worked in the US or what it's like,
Right.
was something that I value a whole lot. And I guess that's the reason that, today if somebody was to ask me where to go and whatever, I always tell them that go to any school that sort of gives you the opportunity to be able to do some kind of practical training,
Right.
because that really makes a difference in terms of what you're able to learn versus just, classroom learning. So
Yeah,
that's that. And
that
then, of
obviously
course,
is.
yeah, but I mean, while it was great from an entertainment IP perspective, and you had professionals teaching you from the industry, and then I got this whole experience of working at Warner Brothers. I think the whole sports law regime in the US is something that's extremely different from what it's like in India. And I think I realized that once I came back to India and I took up my first assignment, which was the Indian Badminton League back in the day, now which is called the Premier
Yeah,
Badminton League. So
yeah,
whatever I had studied there didn't really come in handy except a few things, right? And because things here are very different. And that's when I decided to pursue a second master's, which was hardcore, just sports law. And so that's when, I applied to ISD in Spain.
Spain.
Of course, that was a decision I made from both a learning perspective and also some amount of networking perspective. So I
Yeah,
did an executive master's versus a full time because I wanted to continue working in India. I didn't want to sort of then, once I returned from the US, I didn't want to lose the network that I was building here, or the kind of people that I was getting to know, or the kind of work that I was doing. Yeah, it was
yeah,
really exciting at that point in time, given that the ISL had also just about launched then in 2014. So the work was
yeah.
exciting. That being said, it was a little difficult to balance it all out, a second master's work, and I was also working on the book at that point in time. But it was a fun experience going to Spain 4 times a year. A lot of people used to think that every time she goes for a holiday and comes back, but that was not the case.
Yeah.
That was not the case, but fun times indeed. And in hindsight, the right decision made to pursue a second master's as well. Because it sort of gave me the advantage of because the executive master especially was a program where professionals came and taught, and also was a program taken up by professionals. So by the end of the program, I think I had a network about 100 odd lawyers in 100 different countries across the world, right? So that's something that I mean, has gone a long way all these years. It's been 5 years now, and it's very
Yeah.
easy in terms of every time you get stuck about, you want to learn about something from a particular jurisdiction, or even just case laws, or, how a particular situation is being dealt with in a particular country. It's it's so much easier to just pick up the phone, because you always, and I think the alumni network, the frat bonding is such that everybody is super helpful. And so it just makes life extremely easy now.